So I wanted to make this comprehensive guide about the most efficient way to complete the Win 1000 Battles task in ZA Legends using a turbo controller, because I see people complain pretty much every day about having to complete all these battles. Most people finish the game with somewhere in the rough ballpark of 500 battles completed, and finishing the 1000 Battles task is necessary to earn the Shiny Charm and quadruple your Shiny odds. Since a lot of people are more interested in hunting for shinies than continuing to do battles in the post-game, it makes sense that they'd want to knock this out as quickly and effortlessly as possible. So there's a specific strategy for this that I think was originally shared on Reddit a few weeks ago, and since then it's been shared out almost exactly by a bunch of different people on YouTube and other places. This strategy involves getting an Alpha Garchomp, which you basically have a 3% chance of finding every time you reset the 2 Alpha spawns in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game. Then you teach the Garchomp the move Sand Tomb and give it a Rocky Helmet item. Then you go to Restaurant Lana, you set your turbo controller to automatically press the A button for you, and then you keep the left trigger of the controller held down with something like a rubber band. So in this challenge that you can participate in at Restaurant Lana, there's 3 separate trainers who each send out 2 Pokemon one after another to battle you. With the left trigger permanently held down, you'll automatically target the first Pokemon that a trainer sends out. And because the A button is set to Auto Turbo, you'll continuously use the corresponding attack on that first Pokemon until it's knocked out. However, with the L trigger permanently held down, you won't target or attack the second Pokemon at all. A move like Sand Tomb, which is summoned into the battlefield for multiple turns, has the potential to stick around and deal damage to, or even knock out, the second Pokemon that gets sent out. And then Rocky Helmet does damage to attacking Pokemon when they use a physical contact move against you. So that allows you to take knockouts on all of the secondary Pokemon and complete the challenge. While it's not a bad strategy at all, I think there's some additional information that would be helpful to share with other people, because you can likely pull off a similar strategy with even less effort and also complete your battles more efficiently. So some of the people who have shared the Alpha Garchomp strategy have acknowledged that a newly caught Alpha Garchomp, which could be level 64 or 65, actually has a slight chance of getting knocked out during the challenge. So some people suggest powering it up to roughly level 75, so it's less likely to get knocked out. In reality, it's not actually a big deal if it gets knocked out every once in a while, as long as you don't have any additional Pokemon in your party that don't have a similar move or Rocky Helmet equipped. In the case that your lead Pokemon gets knocked out, your next Pokemon would get sent out and basically have no good way to complete the challenge. So you'd be wasting a lot of time taking damage and eventually getting knocked out, instead of actually making progress towards completing your 1000 battles. However, if you only have a single Pokemon in your party, all that will happen is you'll fail the challenge at likely the 3rd battle, but after already completing 2 battles successfully, and earning more than enough reward money than what it costs to enter into the challenge. Then you'll get sent right back to the counter of the restaurant, where you'll automatically be able to start the next round of the challenge. So, it really isn't a big deal if your Pokemon does get knocked out occasionally. Alternatively, if you're into the post-game, what you can do is buy more Rocky Helmets inside of the Racine Construction Building, so you could have multiple Pokemon that are able to complete the challenge for you, even if your original lead Pokemon gets knocked out. If you haven't beaten the game yet, and you haven't gotten the Rocky Helmet, you can obtain it by doing a side mission located here on the map, where you have to battle a few Beldum that are blocking a Holovator. So before committing to catching a new Pokemon for this, something that's definitely worth knowing is that by the time most players reach the point in the game where they're looking to grind out these battles, I think it's actually very likely that they already have a Pokemon that they've been playing through the game with that would already be suitable to knock these battles out with. This is because Sand Tomb isn't the only move option you have here. So Sand Tomb is a ground type move that 16 different Pokemon in the game can learn. But Fire Spin and Whirlpool are two moves that work almost exactly the same, but there's even more Pokemon that can learn those moves, and you're even more likely to have one of those Pokemon at a sufficiently high level already than you are with Sand Tomb. I've compiled tables here that show you all of the Pokemon in the game that can learn these three moves, which I'll also provide a link to below. I have them sorted by their HP stat, which roughly corresponds to their ability to complete the challenge without fainting, as well as by their special attack stat, which is the stat used to calculate the amount of damage that these three attacks do. If you already have a Garchomp, or you'd like to get one anyway, then that'll work totally fine. But Excadrill is also another ground-type Pokemon that people are likely to have that can learn Sand Tomb. If you look at Fire Spin, there's 32 different Pokemon that can learn it, so you have twice as many options there. And these options include Emboar, which evolves from one of the starter Pokemon, and Charizard, which people are likely to obtain at the Pokemon Research Lab during their playthrough. Dragonite and Talonflame are a couple other examples of Pokemon you could use that you might have already powered up during your playthrough of the game. For the Pokemon that only learn Fire Spin through TM, you can find the TM for it in Wild Zone 4 behind this building, and you just need to burn down some vines to reach it. If you look at the water-type move Whirlpool, there's 23 different Pokemon that can learn it, and these include Feraligatr and Blastoise. So, a second one of your 3 possible starter Pokemon options are covered here, and also a second one of the 3 Kanto starters you can pick from is covered. Gyarados is an example of another Pokemon that a lot of people will likely use during their playthrough. Dragonite can actually learn Whirlpool in addition to Fire Spin, so you could basically use either move with it. Gyarados is the only Pokemon that knows Whirlpool without the TM for it, but you receive the TM at level 8 of Mabel's research, so you would almost definitely have it already. So again, you can completely avoid the process of catching a new Alpha Pokemon if you look through these tables and you find a Pokemon that you already have that's sufficiently powered up, which would be somewhere around level 60 or higher. But if you don't have anything that's suitable, there's a few options that will work even better than Garchomp for grinding through the challenge. There's a specific advantage that Flying-type Pokemon have in this challenge, which is that they are completely immune to Ground-type attacks. The second Pokemon that the first trainer sends out against you is Skiddo, which only has a single move out of its 4, Takedown, which makes physical contact and causes it to take damage from Rocky Helmet. So what can happen here is that you can get unlucky, and the Skiddo will repeatedly use the other 3 attacks against you that don't cause it to take damage from the Rocky Helmet, and that'll chip away at your health. However, because 2 of Skiddo's 4 moves are ground-type moves, the Skiddo will never use these 2 moves against Flying-type Pokemon. It'll instead use Takedown every other attack it does, and it'll take damage from the Rocky Helmet much more often. Specifically, the 2 Pokemon that I think are best to use out of all the Alpha Pokemon that you can find in Wild Zone 20 are Talonflame and Gyarados. They're both Flying-type Pokemon, and Talonflame has one advantage in that it can't get burned by the attacks of the 3rd trainer. From my testing, through the first 15 runs of this challenge, on average, a level 64 Talonflame completes the challenge faster than a Gyarados. Another decent option out of the Alpha Pokemon you can find in Wild Zone 20 would be Dragonite. If you don't want to keep resetting the spawns until you find one of these Pokemon, or you don't have access to Wild Zone 20 yet, another really good option is using Alpha Salamence. It's the highest level Alpha Pokemon in the game that you can catch outside of Wild Zone 20, and at level 61 or 62, it's only a few levels lower than the other Pokemon. It's a guaranteed spawn in Wild Zone 18, so you can access it before the postgame, and it's generally pretty easy to get. From my testing, like Garchomp, it might faint very occasionally. My guess would be roughly 5% of the time after you first catch it. But on average, it actually completes the challenge faster than Gyarados, and even slightly faster than Talonflame. So those are all options you can use with essentially no investment of resources and just by catching a new Pokemon. But if you do have some extra money and experience candies to spare, there's actually an alternative build that you can use to get you through the challenge significantly more quickly and without the need for the Rocky Helmet at all. The ability to hit a trainer's second Pokemon with your attack is really dependent on which moves the first and second Pokemon use against yours. If the first Pokemon attacks you from a distance, your attack will be summoned further from your Pokemon. So, if the second Pokemon uses an attack where it moves towards you, it will generally not get hit by your lasting attack. So what I found is that Starmie and Slowbro, because of their water and psychic dual typing, will basically always be able to take out both of your opponent's Pokemon consistently, without needing a Rocky Helmet, as long as they're powered up enough. So with those two, you get through the challenge much faster and more consistently. Because of the water typing, the first trainer will try to use Bullet Seed, and then Razor Leaf against you, which are both attacks that are used at a distance from you. So the Skiddo that gets sent out will get hit by the Whirlpool attack. And then because of their psychic typing, the Panpour of the second trainer will try to use Bite against you to hit you for weakness. So the Whirlpool gets summoned right in front of your Pokemon, and the Carvanha that follows it runs right into it. The Pansear of the third trainer will similarly try to use Bite against you, and then the Litleo that follows will run right into your attack as well. So it does take some powering up to be able to do enough damage with your attacks to be able to knock out the opponent's Pokemon before your summoned attack goes away, and not have to rely on having a Rocky Helmet to do damage. So I'd only recommend this build if you do have an excess of resources. But it can be fun and satisfying to make an ideal build for the purpose, and it'll get you through the required battles much more quickly. You'll want to maximize the special attack stat of your Starmie or Slowbro. So to max out your special attack EVs at 252, you'll want to go to a Pokemon Center and get yourself up to 25 or 26 calciums in your inventory. If you decide to feed it 25 calcium, you could give it 2 Genius Feathers if you picked up any of those, or you could just not worry about those last 2 EV points. Then, if the Pokemon doesn't already have a modest nature, you'll want to feed it a Modest Mint to boost its special attack stat even further. You might already have a Modest Mint in your inventory, but if not, I think the best place to purchase all the mints, besides the ones that boost speed, is in the courtyard of the building to the west of Wild Zone 3. So if you fast travel to Wild Zone 3, you can either go up the Holovator and jump back down, or just run around the building. And then it'll be this specific stall where you can buy a Modest Mint at. To knock out all of your opponent's Pokemon in this challenge using your Starmie or Slowbro, you would have to power it up to level 90 to be able to do enough damage in the few hits that your Whirlpool makes against the opponent. But you can also give your Pokemon a Mystic Water, which boosts the damage of Water-type attacks, and then you'll be able to reliably get through the challenge at around level 85. If you don't have Mystic Water yet, you can get it in the side mission here, where you battle against another trainer using Water-type Pokemon in the rain. Or if you're in the post-game, then you can buy them inside Racine Construction from the guy on the left side. I made a table comparing Starmie and Slowbro with Mystic Water to a fully maxed out Talonflame and Gyarados, and you can see that they complete the challenge faster than even a maxed out Talonflame, and at about the same speed as a maxed out Gyarados. You can also see that if you take your Starmie or Slowbro up from level 85 and max it out to level 100, it'll get you through the challenge even faster, because the Whirlpool attack will knock out the opposing Pokemon in less hits. I also tested out Quick Claw instead of Mystic Water on the level 100 Starmie and Slowbro, but the speed advantage of the Quick Claw is almost exactly cancelled out by the reduced damage dealt from not having the Mystic Water. If you haven't actually used a Turbo Controller yet, The most common way that you'll activate Auto Turbo is by holding down the Turbo button and pressing A to activate Manual Turbo, and then doing this one more time. You can do this on the Hori split pads as well. On the 8-bit Do controllers, it's a bit less intuitive, and some people don't even know that there's an Auto Turbo feature. But with those controllers, what you have to do is hold down the A button, then press the star button twice, and then release both buttons. So yeah, that's basically everything I have to share on the topic, and I hope it's helpful to any of you that haven't completed your 1000 battles yet. I'm hoping to make another video soon covering how to AFK farm Restaurant Le Wow for significantly more money and experience using a macro controller. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Thanks for watching.